The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the Blackstone mansion's grand dining room as Marcus Blackstone adjusted his Armani tie and checked his Rolex for the third time. The tech mogul's impatience was palpable. He had a conference call with Tokyo investors in 20 minutes, and the last thing he needed was to be kept waiting by household staff. "Where the hell is dinner?" Marcus barked, his voice echoing through the cavernous room. At 34, he had built a tech empire worth over $200 million, and he wasn't accustomed to delays, especially not in his own home. The heavy oak doors to the kitchen swung open, and Elena Vasquez appeared, carefully balancing a silver tray laden with his evening meal. At 52, she moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had spent decades perfecting the art of invisibility in wealthy households. Her graying hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her simple black uniform was pressed to perfection. "I apologize for the delay, Mr. Blackstone," Elena said softly, her slight Mexican accent coloring her words. "The lamb needed a few extra minutes to reach the perfect temperature." Marcus barely glanced up from his phone as she approached. "Just put it down and get out. I don't have time for your excuses." Elena set the tray down with practiced precision, the fine china making barely a whisper against the mahogany table. As she began to retreat, Marcus's phone rang, his business partner David Chen calling from their Manhattan office. "David, please tell me you have good news about the Morrison deal," Marcus answered, gesturing dismissively at Elena to leave faster. But Elena had stopped mid-step. Something in her posture had changed, a subtle straightening of her shoulders, a tilt of her head that suggested she was listening intently to the conversation. "What do you mean the deal fell through?" Marcus's voice rose sharply. "Morrison Industries was supposed to sign today. That's a $50 million contract." Elena's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She knew that name, Morrison Industries. She knew it very well. "Sir," David's voice was strained through the phone's speaker, "James Morrison called an hour ago. He said he's reconsidering our partnership. Apparently he's heard some concerning things about our business practices." Marcus slammed his fist on the table, causing the crystal water glass to jump. "What kind of concerning things?" "Our company is spotless." Elena took a small step backward, but she didn't leave. Something was compelling her to stay, to listen to this conversation that was clearly destroying the man who had treated her like furniture for the past 3 years. "There are rumors about employee treatment, about cutting corners on safety protocols, about—" David paused. "Marcus, there's talk that we've been falsifying environmental impact reports." The color drained from Marcus's face. "That's ridiculous. Who would spread such lies?" Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her tray tighter. She remembered overhearing Marcus on similar calls late at night when she was cleaning his office. Conversations about massaging the numbers and keeping the EPA happy with creative reporting. "I don't know who's talking," David continued, "but Morrison specifically mentioned someone with inside information. Someone who knew about the Phoenix facility incident that we covered up last year." Marcus's eyes darted around the room, and for the first time, he noticed Elena still standing there, his face contorted with rage. "Are you deaf?" he shouted at her. "I told you to get out. This is a private conversation." Elena straightened up, meeting his gaze directly for the first time in 3 years. "I was just making sure you had everything you needed, sir." Something in her tone made Marcus pause. There was a dignity there he had never noticed before, a strength that seemed oddly familiar. "Well, I don't need anything from you," Marcus sneered, turning back to his phone. "David, we'll figure this out. Morrison can't prove anything." "Actually," Elena said quietly, "I think he can." Both Marcus and David fell silent. Marcus slowly turned to face his maid, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to dawning horror. "What did you just say?" Marcus's voice was dangerously low. Elena set her tray down on a side table and faced him fully. For the first time, Marcus really looked at her. Not through her, not past her, but at her. And something clicked in his memory. "You don't remember me, do you?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "From the business conference in Phoenix 2 years ago." Marcus's mouth went dry. The Phoenix facility, the environmental conference, the scandal they had buried with bribes and legal threats. "You were giving a presentation about your company's commitment to green technology," Elena continued. "I was there representing Morrison Industries' Environmental Oversight Division." The phone slipped from Marcus's numb fingers, clattering onto the marble floor. David's voice could be heard faintly calling out, "Marcus, Marcus, are you there?" "You're Elena Vasquez," Marcus whispered, the pieces finally falling into place. "So you're the EPA consultant who tried to blow the whistle on our Phoenix facility." Elena nodded slowly. "The same Elena Vasquez whose career you destroyed with your army of lawyers and your threats. The same woman whose reputation you ruined so thoroughly that no environmental firm would touch me." Marcus staggered backward, his legs hitting his chair. But you're my maid. You've been cleaning my house for 3 years." "Yes," Elena said simply. "After you blacklisted me from my profession, after you made sure I could never work in environmental consulting again, I had to survive somehow. I had to pay for my daughter's medical school, had to keep food on the table. So I took the only job I could find." The irony hit Marcus like a physical blow. For 3 years, the woman whose life he had systematically destroyed had been serving his meals, washing his clothes, cleaning his toilets, and he had never recognized her. "You've been in my house," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've had access to everything." Elena's smile was sad, but not without a hint of satisfaction. "I've cleaned your office every night for 3 years, Mr. Blackstone. I've emptied your trash, dusted your desk, organized your files. I've heard your late-night phone calls, seen your private documents, watched you build your empire on lies and environmental destruction." Marcus felt the walls of his perfectly ordered world crumbling around him. "What do you want? Money? I'll pay you whatever you want to keep quiet." Eleanor shook her head. "I don't want your money, Mr. Blackstone. I never did. I wanted justice for the communities your factory poisoned. I wanted accountability for the cover-ups and the lies. And now, finally, I have enough evidence to make sure the truth comes out." She reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small recording device. 3 years of evidence, Mr. Blackstone. 3 years of your own words condemning you." Marcus lunged forward, but Eleanor stepped back calmly. "It's too late. Copies have already been sent to the EPA, to the FBI, and yes, to James Morrison. He's been a friend of mine for over a decade. We worked together long before you destroyed my career." The phone on the floor crackled to life again. "Marcus, what's happening? The Morrison contract was just the beginning. I'm getting calls from investors, from the board. They're saying there's going to be a federal investigation." Elena picked up the phone and handed it to Marcus with the same careful precision she used to serve his meals. "You should probably take that call, Mr. Blackstone. It sounds important." Marcus stared at the phone in his hand, then at Elena. For 3 years he had looked through her as if she were invisible. Now, she was the only thing he could see. "How?" he whispered. "How did you stand it? Serving the man who destroyed your life?" Elena's expression softened slightly. "I have a daughter in medical school, Mr. Blackstone. She's going to be a doctor, going to help people. Every day I cleaned your house. Every insult I swallowed, every moment I bit my tongue, it was for her future. You took away my career, but you couldn't take away my purpose." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Blackstone, the lamb is getting cold. You might want to eat while you still can afford such luxuries." As Elena left the dining room, Marcus stood alone under his crystal chandelier, holding a phone that carried the sound of his empire crashing down around him. The woman he had dismissed as invisible had been watching, waiting, and planning for 3 long years, and now, finally, she had won. If this story is touching you in some way, comment below where you're watching from. Every place has its own struggles, and sometimes it's incredible to see how we all connect through such human stories. 2 weeks later, Marcus Blackstone sat in his lawyer's office, staring at a stack of legal documents that would have been unimaginable just months ago. The mahogany-paneled room that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a tomb. His empire was crumbling faster than anyone could have predicted. "The federal investigation is moving forward," his attorney, Robert Sterling, said grimly. "The EPA has enough evidence to pursue criminal charges. We're looking at potential environmental crimes, fraud, conspiracy." Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of sleepless nights. "What about the assets? Can we protect anything?" "The government has frozen most of your accounts pending the investigation. The board voted you out of your own company yesterday. Marcus, you need to prepare for the possibility of prison time." The words hit him like physical blows. Prison. The man who had owned multiple homes, who had flown on private jets, who had treated people like Elena as if they were beneath his notice. He might spend years in a concrete cell. "There's something else," Sterling continued reluctantly. "The story has gone viral. Someone leaked audio recordings of your conversations. The media is calling it the biggest corporate scandal of the year." Marcus's phone buzzed with another notification. He had stopped checking social media days ago when the death threats started pouring in. Former employees were coming forward with stories of his cruelty, his arrogance, his complete disregard for anyone he deemed beneath him. "Mr. Sterling," Marcus said quietly, "I need to ask you something. The woman who exposed all this, Elena Vasquez, do you know where she is now?" Sterling looked surprised. "Why would you want to know that?" "Marcus, any contact with her could be seen as witness intimidation." "I don't want to intimidate her," Marcus said, surprised by his own honesty. I need to understand something." The truth was, Marcus hadn't been able to stop thinking about Elena, not about revenge or damage control, but about the 3 years she had spent in his house. 3 years of serving meals to the man who had destroyed her life. 3 years of cleaning his messes while quietly gathering evidence of his crimes. "She's back to her old life," Sterling said, after consulting his notes. "Consulting work, speaking engagements about corporate whistleblowing. Apparently several major firms are fighting to hire her. She's become something of a hero in environmental circles." A hero. While Marcus had become a villain whose name was synonymous with corporate greed and environmental destruction, that evening, Marcus returned to his mansion, soon to be seized by the government, and walked through rooms that Eleanor had cleaned thousands of times. He found himself in his office, looking at the desk where she had dusted around his most incriminating documents. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus tried to imagine what it would be like to be powerless, to have your career destroyed by someone with more money and better lawyers, to swallow your pride and take whatever work you could find just to survive. His phone rang, jolting him from his thoughts. It was his mother, Catherine Blackstone, calling from her retirement community in Florida. "Marcus, honey, I've been watching the news." Her voice was small, confused. "They're saying terrible things about you." Marcus closed his eyes. His mother had always been proud of his success, had bragged to her friends about her millionaire son. "Mom, some of it's true. I made some bad choices. But that woman, the maid, they're saying she was some kind of spy?" "She wasn't a spy, Mom. She was someone I hurt, and she had every right to expose what I did." There was a long pause. "Marcus, you were raised better than this. Your father and I taught you to treat people with respect, no matter who they were." The words cut deep, because they were true. Somewhere along the way, success had twisted him into someone his parents wouldn't recognize, someone who looked through people instead of at them. "I know, Mom, I know." After hanging up, Marcus walked to his kitchen, Elena's domain for 3 years. He opened the refrigerator and stared at its contents, realizing he had no idea how to cook for himself. Elena had prepared every meal, had anticipated his needs before he even voiced them. He thought about her daughter in medical school, about how Elena had endured his contempt to pay for her child's education. While Marcus had been building his fortune on lies, Eleanor had been building her daughter's future on sacrifice and dignity. The next morning brought more devastating news. The company's stock had become worthless. His homes were being seized. His so-called friends had stopped returning his calls. Marcus Blackstone, who had once commanded respect through fear and money, now commanded nothing at all. But as he sat in his empty mansion, surrounded by the remnants of his former life, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: clarity. For the first time, he could see the truth about who he had become and who he might still have a chance to be. The question was whether it was too late to change, and whether Elena Vasquez, the woman whose strength had ultimately brought him down, might ever believe that change was possible. 6 months had passed since Marcus's world imploded. The federal courthouse steps felt cold beneath his feet as he emerged from his sentencing hearing, squinting in the harsh afternoon sunlight. 18 months in minimum security prison, 5 years probation, and community service that would span the next decade of his life. His court-appointed lawyer, he could no longer afford Robert Sterling's fees, had called it lucky. Marcus felt anything but lucky as reporters shouted questions he couldn't bring himself to answer. "Mr. Blackstone, do you have any regrets? What do you say to the communities affected by your company's pollution?" Marcus pushed through the crowd without speaking. What could he say? That he was sorry. The words felt hollow, inadequate for the magnitude of harm he had caused, but as he walked down the courthouse steps, he saw her. Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the media circus, wearing a professional Navy suit that spoke of her return to consulting work. She wasn't there for the spectacle. She was there for closure, Marcus realized, to see justice finally served. Their eyes met across the chaos of reporters and protesters. Elena's expression was unreadable, but she didn't look away. For a moment, the noise around them seemed to fade. Marcus found himself walking toward her, ignoring the shouts of his temporary lawyer to get in the car and leave. When he reached Elena, they stood in silence for several seconds. "Mrs. Vasquez," he said finally, his voice hoarse from months of stress. "Mr. Blackstone." Her tone was neutral, neither hostile nor sympathetic. Marcus struggled to find words that weren't completely inadequate. "I know an apology can't undo what I did to you, to your career, to all those communities, but I need you to know that I understand now. What I took from you, what I took from everyone." Elena studied his face carefully. Gone was the arrogant tech mogul who had dismissed her as invisible. This man looked older, worn down by consequences and sleepless nights. But more than that, there was something in his eyes she had never seen before, genuine remorse. "Understanding is a beginning," Elena said quietly. "But it's only a beginning." "I know." Marcus glanced around at the reporters who were trying to get close enough to record their conversation. Could we talk somewhere private? Please, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but there's a coffee shop 2 blocks north," Elena interrupted. "I'll give you 15 minutes. 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other in a small cafe, 2 cups of coffee growing cold between them. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. For 3 years, Elena had served Marcus his meals, and now they sat as equals across a table. "How is your daughter?" Marcus asked. Elena's expression softened slightly. "Maria graduated medical school last month. She's starting her residency at Children's Hospital in Chicago, pediatric oncology. She's going to save lives." Marcus's voice carried genuine admiration. "Everything you sacrificed, everything you endured, it was for something beautiful." "Yes, it was." Elena's pride was evident. "But that doesn't erase what you put me through. 3 years of watching you dismiss people, hurt people, destroy the environment for profit. 3 years of biting my tongue while you treated me like I was nothing." Marcus nodded, accepting the weight of her words. "I've been thinking about those 3 years every day, about how you must have felt, serving meals to the man who ruined your life. I don't understand how you found the strength." "You want to know the truth?" Elena leaned forward slightly. "There were nights I wanted to quit. Nights I wanted to scream at you, to tell you exactly what I thought of your arrogance and cruelty. But every time I was tempted to give up, I thought about Maria. I thought about all the other people you were hurting with your lies and cover-ups. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was in the perfect position to stop you. So you planned it, all of it." "Not at first," Elena admitted. "At first I was just trying to survive, to keep my head down and earn money for Maria's education. But as the months passed, as I saw more evidence of your crimes, I realized I had a responsibility, not just to myself, but to everyone you were hurting." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "You could have destroyed me in the first month. Why did you wait 3 years? Elena's smile was sad but knowing. "Because I needed ironclad evidence. Your lawyers destroyed me once. I wasn't going to give them the chance to do it again. And honestly, I wanted you to understand what it felt like to lose everything, the way I did." The honesty of her answer hit Marcus like a physical blow, but he found he respected her for it. "I'm going to prison next month," Marcus said finally. "I know. When I get out, I'll have nothing. No money, no reputation, no career. I'll be starting over completely." Elena nodded. "Yes, you will. The question is, what kind of person will you choose to be when you start over?" Marcus looked into her eyes that held pain, strength, and something that might have been hope. "I want to be someone better, someone who sees people like you, really sees them, someone who uses whatever second chance I might get to help instead of hurt." "Words are easy, Mr. Blackstone," Elena said, standing to leave. "Actions are what matter." As she walked toward the door, Marcus called out, "Mrs. Vasquez?" She turned back. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for stopping me, for having the courage to do what was right, even when it cost you everything." Elena paused at the door. "Everyone deserves a chance to change, Mr. Blackstone, even you. The question is whether you'll take it. If this story is touching you in some way, comment where you're watching from. Every place has its own pain. And sometimes it's incredible to see how we all connect through such human stories." 3 years later, Marcus Blackstone knocked on the door of a modest 2-story house in a working-class neighborhood of Denver. His hands trembled slightly, not from the cold October air, but from the weight of what he was about to do. The door opened, and Elena Vasquez appeared, looking surprised but not entirely shocked to see him. She had aged gracefully in the years since their coffee shop conversation, her hair now completely silver, her face carrying the peace that comes from justice served and wrongs made right. "Mr. Blackstone," she said quietly, I heard you were released early for good behavior. 6 months ago, Marcus confirmed. He looked different too, thinner, wearing simple jeans and a worn jacket instead of his former expensive suits. Prison and the years that followed had stripped away every trace of his old arrogance. Mrs. Vasquez, I know I have no right to be here, but I have something I need to tell you. Something I need to ask you. Elena studied his face for a long moment, then stepped aside. Come in, but I should warn you, I have company. Marcus stepped into the warmly lit living room and froze. A young woman in scrubs was curled up on the couch, reading a medical journal. She looked up as they entered, and Marcus immediately saw Elena's eyes in her face. Maria, Elena said, this is Marcus Blackstone. Maria's expression shifted as recognition dawned. This was the man who had destroyed her mother's career, who had forced them into years of financial struggle and uncertainty. But as she looked at him now, she saw something unexpected, humility, and what appeared to be genuine remorse. Dr. Vasquez, Marcus said, his voice filled with respect. Your mother has told me about your work at the Children's Hospital. Congratulations on completing your residency. Maria nodded cautiously. Thank you. Elena gestured for Marcus to sit, though she remained standing. What did you want to tell me, Mr. Blackstone? Marcus took a deep breath. For the past 3 years, since our conversation at the coffee shop, I've been trying to figure out how to make amends, not just to you, but to everyone I hurt. The communities that were poisoned by my factories, the employees I mistreated, the environment I helped destroy. He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket pocket. I wanted you to know what I've been doing. After I got out of prison, I started working with a non-profit organization that helps communities affected by corporate environmental crimes. I've been using my knowledge of how companies hide their wrongdoing to help expose other cover-ups. Elena's eyebrows rose slightly. You're working against corporations like your own? I'm working for justice, Marcus said simply. The way you did when you spent 3 years gathering evidence against me. I've helped uncover environmental crimes in 7 states. I've testified before Congress about corporate accountability, and I've been doing it all for free, living off my savings from when I sold everything I had left. Maria leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. Why? Why would you do that? Marcus turned to her, his expression earnest. Because your mother taught me something during those 3 years, even though I was too arrogant to realize it at the time. She taught me that real strength isn't about having power over others. It's about using whatever position you have to protect people who can't protect themselves. Eleanor sat down slowly, processing his words. The non-profit work, is that why you're here? Partly, Marcus said. There's a case in Phoenix, a company that's doing exactly what I used to do, covering up environmental damage, bribing officials, threatening whistleblowers. The community is mostly Latino families, people without the resources to fight back. They need someone who understands how these cover-ups work. And you want my help? Elena said, understanding. Not just your help, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. I want to work for you. You're the best environmental consultant in the Southwest now. You have the credibility I lost, the respect I never deserved. If you'll have me, I want to be part of your team. I want to help you stop the next Marcus Blackstone before he can hurt anyone. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Maria watched the exchange with fascination, seeing her mother weigh the man's words against years of pain and injustice. There's something else, Marcus said softly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know what I did is unforgivable, but I'm asking for the chance to spend the rest of my life trying to balance the scales, to use what I learned as a criminal to help catch other criminals. Elena stood and walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where she had rebuilt her life. Finally, she turned back to Marcus. If I say yes, you work under my supervision. You follow my lead. You earn the trust of the communities we serve. I don't give it to you. Marcus nodded eagerly. Whatever terms you set. And, Eleanor continued, her voice growing firm, you understand that this isn't about your redemption. This is about justice for people who deserve better. Your personal healing is secondary to the work. I understand completely. Eleanor looked at her daughter, who gave her a small nod of approval. There's one more condition, Eleanor said, turning back to Marcus. You stay for dinner. I want to hear everything about these cases you've been working on, and I want to know if you've learned to cook for yourself, or if you're still helpless in the kitchen. For the first time in years, Marcus smiled. Not the predatory smile of his corporate days, but something genuine and humble. I learned to cook in prison, actually. Nothing fancy, but I can manage basic meals. Good, Elena said, moving toward the kitchen. Because if we're going to work together, you're going to need to take care of yourself. I'm not your maid anymore, Mr. Blackstone. I'm your boss." As they walked toward the kitchen together, the man who had once dismissed her as invisible and the woman who had brought him to justice, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in his former life of wealth and power. The satisfaction of knowing he was finally on the right side of the fight. And now that you've reached the end, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Your presence matters, and your story does too.